AskReddit Storytime. Please like and subscribe. Tour guides of Reddit. What's the worst thing a tourist has ever done under your supervision? About 15 years ago, I worked as a deckhand on a line of boats that took people out to Fort Sumter. The trip was about an hour each way. One day, we were about halfway there, and two teenagers decided it would be fun to jump off and try to swim to shore. This is in Charleston Harbor, which has a pretty solid tidal current, lots of boat traffic, and probably more sharks than one would like to think about. We ended up having to perform a water rescue on them. Then continued on to the fort, with the Coast Guard coming and picking them up. All in all, an extreme act of stupidity. Led a scuba diving tour? While signing the safety waivers and all that, one very old man kept telling us that he had a DNR, do not resuscitate. We plainly told him that we are not bound to a DNR, and if he passed out for any reason we would attempt to resuscitate by our safety training. Pretty much all the divers are assuming this guy is gonna kill himself down there, probably spit out the reg and go quietly into the night. Dive happens, pretty much everyone is hawk-eyed on this guy. I see him go behind a large coral head and lay down in the sand and spit out his reg. He is only at about 60 feet, so I grab him and wrestle him to the surface. He will not take my backup regulator, so I slam it against his mouth to purge air into his face. We get to the surface and he is fighting me non-stop, trying to pull all of his gear off. I throw a very hard punch to his jaw and knock him out, actually trained to do this during dive rescues to keep the panicked person from killing you too. 3 weeks later and he tries to sue my dive shop and myself personally. TLDR, guy tried to kill himself. On an open-topped tour bus in London, woman tries to dangle her toddler over the railing, then starts saying she's going to complain to my manager when I told her to stop. Caught her doing it again, and company policy said that anyone endangering their kids like that was to be removed from the tour, so the driver had to come up and march her off. She still insisted she did nothing wrong. Like, she literally had the kid's feet on the side rail of the moving bus and was just holding him loosely round the waist. One low-hanging tree branch, of which there were many on the route, and that kid was gone. Worked at an aquarium. This dude arrived in the Amazon exhibit room featuring the tank where every fish in it can hurt you, and promptly started dangling his sister's kid over the exhibit. I immediately stepped up to him and pushed the kid back from over it, firmly explaining that this wasn't allowed and that I'd have to call security. Thank God, the kid's mother was on my side and started tearing into the man. It took her 5 minutes of no, that was absolutely not appropriate, for him to get the message that he'd seriously fucked up. Some people never do get the whole pointy venomous fish bat, no dangling kids thing. I was working on a tourist island in Australia when this man pulled out almost all the back feathers of a peacock because he wanted to keep one. He sneaked up behind it and grabbed a huge handful and yanked them all out. He was immediately escorted off the island. The peacock had a huge bare patch and most of its beautiful feathers were gone. Not a tour guide, but was doing an English language camp for foreign kids. Took the kids on a day trip to London, which involved going up the London Eye. While in the queue, one of the kids started shouting that he had a bomb in his bag and he was going to blow everyone up. Almost got all 20 kids in the group kicked out. They took a big SH in front of the group. So, we tour through streets and parks and make it really clear that the toilets at the beginning of the tour are the only ones for the first 90 minutes of tour. We get to a park about 30 minutes into the tour. Not a big park, mind you, it is basically a big roundabout with a swing set, bench and 2 trees. I'm in the middle of my spiel in the park when I see a guy at the back of the group step away, pull his pants down and squat on the grass. Of course I was stunned and lost my flow, which had everyone looking around only to recoil in horror as this guy drops a log like it was nothing. He wasn't even ashamed. I worked at a living history farm museum. I had a kid that was climbing on stuff the whole tour in the farmhouse and trying to get behind the smith in the blacksmith shop during a demo. After the tour, when people are allowed to roam the grounds, I hear his mom screaming and look over to the barn, and this kid has climbed the fence into the field with our longhorn oxen and is trying to poke them with a stick. I walk over and calmly told him to get out of the field before our lazy oxen decide they've had enough, but this jack-off decides to look me in the eye and smack dead on the ass with the stick like it's a riding crop. Dead, bless him, just kinda jumps a little and whips his head around with a WTF dude look on his face. But seeing as he's a longhorn, he just wipes this kid out with one of his horns when he turned his head. Kid goes flying into the dirt and is having a meltdown. Mom is freaking out. I'm like, dude, get the hell out of the pen before Dad actually gets mad. So this kid is crying and trying to climb the fence out of the field, and Bill, who has been watching this whole thing, waits until the kid is almost over the fence and walks up to him and nudges him in the ass with his nose and pushes him off the top of the fence. It was everything I could do to keep from laughing. Kid was fine, Dad was fine, but the kid and his mom were promptly kicked out of the museum. Their dad and little sister were allowed to stay because she was well behaved and was just enjoying petting the goats at the petting zoo. So since the kid had to leave but his sister didn't, there was a temper tantrum in the parking lot that could be heard all the way to the other side of the farm. But the oxen got some extra grain that night, so I guess they won in the end. I'm a bush pilot in Alaska and occasionally do glacier air tours of my boss asks. I'm not a fan of doing tours. One day I'm doing a glacier tour and had probably 7 people on board, and the dude sitting next to just looks at me and says I'm the captain now and yanks the plane 30 degrees to the right and then lets go and laughs, saying he was just kidding. There was yelling to follow via my mouth. I'm in the middle of talking and someone's phone rings. Okay, that happens sometimes, and usually they just cancel the call or step outside. Nope, this guy answers the call and starts talking on the phone, only a few meters from where I'm standing. I think, oh, he'll just quickly explain he's busy and end the call. No. He starts a conversation. The rest of the group glare at him and I'm put in an awkward position because my workplace put a huge emphasis on politeness. So I suggest to him to continue his call in the hallway, just outside the room we were in, to which he replied no, I'm fine here, and went back to his phone conversation. I'm doing my best to talk to the rest of the group, about 25 people, but he's so loud. Eventually this Chinese woman yells across the room at him, shut up, we want to listen to the lady, not you, which worked. But I just couldn't imagine the nerve to ruin everyone's experience like that, cause you're too selfish to talk on the phone outside. Also, the place I worked allowed photos but had a strict no photos of the staff rule for privacy reasons. I always explained this at the start and 99% of people were cool. One day I had a particularly happy snapper who got right up in a staff member's face to take a photo, like I'm taking centimeters from his face to take a photo. The staffer was just some rondo middle-aged white dude, so I'm not sure why the fascination, but he was livid. It's like I saw it happen in slow motion so couldn't do anything to stop it. That guy was removed from the tour? Former whitewater rafting guide. There's a calmer section of the river people can, if they choose to, hop out and swim through. They are wearing life jackets so you can just float through it. This woman decides she wants to try it and hops out. After she pops up she slowly tilts forward until just the back of her jacket is out of the water and she's completely still. After 5 or so seconds of this I start to realize this might not be intentional and paddle over and physically pick her head up above the water, followed by her gasping for air. I haul her in the boat and ask what happened. She said she didn't know what to do as she'd never been submerged in water before. 1. Why are you on a whitewater rafting trip? 2. Why didn't your strategy involve moving your body? This reminds me of when I went scuba diving. Apparently there are people who can't swim that go scuba diving. One guy held his GF in his arms while diving. Like swam with her underwater. Someone else has to manage your suit pressure and all that. I don't know if that's impressive that she trusts other PPL that much or Darwin just hasn't caught up yet. Edit. This was in Thailand. You don't have to be certified to do beginner dives or try dives, not sure what they're called. A certified instructor goes down with you, you just learn a few basic techniques and they handle most of the other stuff. But each instructor had at least 2 beginner divers they were in charge of. Couple of guys I used to play cricket with went on a school trip to Auschwitz and decided to steal a small pair of glasses and some buttons they found half buried in the ground. They were detained by Polish police while they were leaving the site. Hard to know what goes through people's heads sometimes. On the subject of Auschwitz, I work with a dude whose go-to badass story is that he snorted Coca-Cola while walking around Auschwitz. I've probably heard him tell 25 people or so the same story and every person kind of looks at him like he's a ducking piece of shit and then they try and change the subject. To this day I don't think he understands why no one sees it as badass. AskReddit Storytime. Please like and subscribe.